All right, everybody, we got another guest here for the Crypto 2020 Summit, Mr. Ben Jorgensen of
Yeah.
Constellation Network. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you guys. I'm really excited about this summit. It's pretty powerful. It's looking pretty powerful. So, and a
Yes.
perfect time for this market.
Right,
Great
yo.
to have me.
It's feeling like the perfect time. It feels like the market is really starting to kick back up. So let me just start off with just a high level question in one word. If you were to sum up your prediction for 2020, crypto
Yeah.
2020, what's the word that like keeps coming back to the top of your mind?
Yeah, as it pertains to Constellation or the entire industry.
The entire industry.
I I would say commercialization. I realize that's not unique, and we've been saying that for years. But the last year, like everybody caught their breath, and not a whole lot happened with
Right.
with
Yeah.
Bitcoin and crypto in general. I don't think it did. So I would still say commercialization. I think it actually has to happen next year. We have to see more experimentation.
Why do you think the average person in the Western world should care about cryptocurrency, even if we already have a system that we think works?
Yeah, I like this. I think the average person should care about it because because the root of cryptocurrency is micropayments, and cryptocurrency allows us to attach a payment to literally everything, whether it's your own personal data, and being able to sell your own personal data for pennies or fraction of the cost. I think it's important that people understand where payments come into everything that we do and how to accommodate for that. And then um, I think there's a care on the ethos of that. I think people should care because there's a movement behind cryptocurrency around alternative governance and more transparency and trust, which is a common theme amongst millennials that are really coming into power and coming into fruition.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that you could attach payments or micropayments to every little bit of transaction. So could you kind of dive a little bit deeper into like that whole micropayments? And one of the things I like to think about is like one way that I explain it is imagine right now something that blockchain could open up is streaming your salary, where
Mhm.
you could instead of having to get paid in 2 week installments, because that's just the most efficient way that we can with all this paper stuff. Imagine you just you clock in or whatever and you get paid every single second that you're working and always
Mhm.
accruing that. So that's one thing that just comes to my mind is like streaming a salary one day. But what are
Yeah.
some of the micro payment applications that at Constellation Network really excite you guys?
Yeah, I think you make a great point. When you think about that, people go, "Well, why can't we just use PayPal for all that?" The amount of infrastructure that would need to be built, you have to rethink the infrastructure to be able to pay in the minute little detail of every aspect or every second of your salary or your car or lending out your car, lending out your house. All these different things are kind of mutually exclusive centralized organizations. But what if you had the ability, me as a person, to be able to kind of license my data and all of my assets? How would you control that, and who would be responsible for that? Or could you think of an alternative way where all these organizations interoperate amongst one another? It's kind of a really big leap to think like what, and you maybe kind of need to understand the computational risks around data that exists. So taking a step back and how Constellation thinks about monetizing or micropayments in general or data is the monetization of data. So what is data? So we focus on big data, and big data are vast amounts of data that you can run computations in a programmatic way. So meaning that you can take tons of data and take algorithms to analyze and identify patterns that exist within that data. And where Constellation kind of sees is like, how do you monetize the computation of data? So how do you take all this data that we have, and wow, it's really cool that we can analyze patterns. We can identify financial patterns on what Berkshire Hathaway is trading, or we can analyze how a car is performing and reward the data it's sending if it's good or bad data. So the way that we think about the monetization of micropayments is not just me paying you for some sort of action, but actually the programmatic exchange of data. So let's say a solar panel is producing so much energy and it wants to kind of give some of that energy to some plant. You could actually do this in real time and not have some sort of manual exchange. And more specifically, you could actually monetize that data if it's good or bad. Does it work within those high computations? Apologies if I'm getting like really down the rabbit hole, but we think about monetizing data. And monetizing data could be your personal data. What are your trends on the internet? Advertising's been doing this for years. They look at your trends and they're like, you're more likely to click on this Walmart ad, so we're going to bid on you. Well, now we see that there's a different realm that every sort of device that we have, whether it's a thermostat or a car, are going to be exchanging and using data so that they become more efficient. Or a smart city where all these devices, smart buildings, traffic lights, all the different things that are connected digitally are going to be exchanging information to become smarter and more tuned and more efficient. And so that's going to need a micropayment layer.
So that makes sense. We've heard often that data is the new oil, but to the average person, we don't really understand what that is. I mean, we have these apps that run in the background on our phone and on our computer that take our data, but it's not like we're wrestling them for it. We don't even know that it's there in the first place. So how do we think of monetizing something that we don't even know really what it is or how to get our hands on it when it's already being taken away from us every day?
I think it's a great question. And I think that's kind of the aha moment that we're all starting to have. So I want to unpack this because this is a really interesting point and something that I'm very passionate about. And you'll read through all my articles that I post that I get very passionate about. Data being governed by a community, by yourself, and we're not there yet. We're just having that awakening moment that people are like, wait, they're making all this money off of us, and how do they get this? Well, we sign a terms and service the moment we use a free application or any application on the digital front, and that gives them the right to broker our own data. And brokering data exists not just from like social media and Facebook, but it's every major company out there is brokering data, whether it's to a third-party vendor to make sense of what the data means or what our trends and behaviors are, and that can give more insight to a Coca-Cola on where do they market next. It's being bought and sold every day, and we see this through data leaks and data breaches of our personal information, right? And this happens every day, but the cost of a data breach is far less than what they're selling it for. And so as long as people or companies are selling data at a significant profit and the data breach is costing them less than that, it's going to continue. And so I think that's one aspect, but I don't believe that data is the new oil. Data is not the new oil because not everybody's figured out how to use it and how to monetize it, much like you said. So we're in this kind of realm of there are a handful of people and companies that have figured out how to effectively monetize your data and how do they make sense of it. And I think that's a huge part, is that as the thing that we can do, and where I think the value of the blockchain and crypto community come into play, are not so much around the technology. I think the technology is interesting, but I think communities and the voice that everybody has in this decentralized governance of these networks have the opportunity to place new standards and regulation on how data is being used. And so I think that communities can be the voice to say, hey, use this technology because it isn't centrally governed. So people have the choice of where do they send their data, and that they can monetize and choose to give data, their info, and to companies that they want.
I like that. Paint us a picture of how, blockchain or cryptocurrency, because I know, you guys are built on a directed acyclic graph, which is
Mhm.
kind of like a blockchain, but a little bit different. But that's besides the point. Talk about Internet of Things, IoT,
Yeah.
plus a decentralized network such as Constellation Network.
Yeah, so you want me to apply IoT to a decentralized network, right?
Yeah, like what are some of the use cases that you guys are seeing
Yeah,
maybe in the automobile, like smart cars and all these connected devices, and why
sure.
do we need this secure, democratized type protocol?
Okay, well, so a little bit to unpack is what a directed acyclic graph is. A directed acyclic graph has been it's basically a graph-based database for organizing data into what we call into a topology that can be used for high computation. So if I go back and I articulated what big data is. It's large amounts of data that can be um, uh, programmatically analyzed by algorithms to identify trends and behaviors. Well, the way you organize all that data, whether it's a centralized system or it's a decentralized system, is through a directed acyclic graph. And that is the way that you organize data appropriately so that artificial intelligence can run and you can run all these analytics. So one of the big things that we're entering in is that the IoT industry has been around for the better part of 20 years. And we had this idea that devices would connect and communicate, right? IoT is the Internet of Things. So basically, things or devices, whether it's these Bose headphones and our computers or the thermostat that runs, the idea was that they would all kind of connect and communicate, and that
And share data
that
with
would
each other
share
and maybe
data.
transact.
Yeah, your phone, we see it that our phone can now connect to our thermostat, but really the vision of IoT was all these things were going to be autonomous, right? And that they could kind of communicate with one another. So the way that, and if you think about all the data that's produced by all these devices, it's something that's unimaginable, and we're seeing how much data we're creating. 80% of the world's data has been produced in the last 3 years, and I think that stat is even outdated at this point. So one of the big initiatives around creating a graph-based database has been by MongoDB. They're a publicly traded company that provides infrastructure for CTOs to create a single view of all their different data feeds. So one example in IoT would be a smart city. The CTO of Chicago could look at all the traffic lights and smart buildings and have a single view. Well, this is kind of the future of IoT that we all envisioned, is being able to see how data on the public transit systems relating to the traffic lights and are all things online, and do we have it online? Well, what Constellation is focused on is that's great. We're starting to see that we're creating that vision of IoT, that things are connecting, that we can start making inferences that if this transit system comes into play, then the traffic light works. But how do you protect it against, or how do you make it secure? So Constellation focus is building a compatible infrastructure to what's already being done, say MongoDB's platform, and what's already been done in data infrastructures, but now applying security, because we believe that the next major wave of hacks are not around personal data breaches, but they're around spoofing or tampering of data. Think about what could happen to an entire city if something was slightly changed in the city of Chicago, and they didn't have appropriate security across their IoT. So all these connected devices. You might not be able to identify a problem for 5 years from now, and it would have an economic catastrophe that's far greater than anything that we've seen on the terrorist front today.
Yeah, just an example of that would be if a network of gas sensors was disabled,
Right.
and then the gas pipeline had exploded, and there was no way to tell anyone that half the city was about to explode. Just an example there.
No, exactly. That's great.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to turn the conversation just for a little bit. Even though IoT and big data and smart cities is literally one of my favorite topics,
Yeah, I
we
could
could we could
see.
go out to dinner and talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
But one of the other cool things about Constellation and you yourself is building online communities.
Hmm.
So we saw in 2019 a lot of projects really had to cut budget. We saw a lot of Telegram groups get shuttered and changed
Hmm.
just to announcement channels. But you have done the exact opposite. You've just hired more admins. You've been very active in building your community. What do you think needs to happen in 2020 for crypto communities to take things to the next level? And what are some of the trends that you're seeing happening?
Well, I can't thank you enough for observing that. I think it's great that we do spend time talking about the technology, but I appreciate your acknowledgement on the community. We actually don't pay our admins. This is all volunteer based, and what they get access to is information. They get one-on-one time with me. They get time with the team, and they can ask very poignant questions. As such, I kind of reveal a lot of trust to these individuals. So it's a process of, like, you could think of it as like the greatest HR hiring funnel that ever existed, because we took the approach that many communities did in 2018, which is like, hire these admins, teach them, and then they were kind of like answering questions in a very blind fashion, and then founders went off to build. But what we did was we did the same thing, and then we got rid of everybody, and we went quiet, because most companies don't understand who they are for 3 years. I've lived in San Francisco for 10 years. I've built companies. I've worked for companies that have done really well. And every startup has a pattern. No matter how much money you raise, no matter what you do, you don't know your identity of the company for at least 2.5, 3 years. And so what we did is we actually spent time just understanding who we are. What are our values? What are our beliefs? What is our culture as a team, which is insanely important, because that's what makes a thriving company. That allows you to deploy and deliver. So what I believe in, that in 2020, is that I think we're going to have a new realm of governance that comes in, and responsibility by these communities to actually build blockchain companies, build cryptocurrencies. That they aren't just an announcement channel and some sort of like marketing channel, but they are the ones building these organizations, and they are partaking in it to build out the network. And I think that's going to be that's going to be the big switch, is that the people that contribute to communities are going to see success come in the form of the token price going up, or some sort of other event that they contribute, and they can see the fruits of their labor and have some sort of financial connection to it. Not everybody wants the financial connection of cryptocurrency to a blockchain project, but ultimately you're going to see that you can't have this binary dichotomous relationship with a community. They're not just your channel to expose things. They are your community. They are your business. Just like before we got on here, I was talking about how my good friend and past CEO of Hello Kitty, or Sanrio, came into the company and focused on going, hey, how do we let go of control of Hello Kitty and empower local communities to design a Hello Kitty theme that meets their audience? And he took the company from about $100 million market cap to 6.5 billion in the course of 6 years when he was there. And a lot of what we've been working on at Constellation has been working with Ray, his name's Ray Hito, to implement the same practice here. And how do you empower communities to build value and be able to see the fruits of their value? So I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Sorry, that was really long-winded.
No, that's okay. I really hope so. But I think one of the most important takeaways from what you just said is that founders and companies don't have all the answers from the time the white paper is written, and they need to have time to grow and mature and figure out some of these answers. I know a lot of community members expect everything to be known from day one, and that's just not how real life works. So it's
Right.
important that there's give and take and feedback, and the community and the company work together to get these answers as quickly as possible. But they don't just try and stay one path no matter where it was, because you have to have room to pivot. You just
Right.
do.
So one of the things that I actually proposed, I was like, what would happen if we went to the community and said we didn't know something? Would they leave? We had already at the time our token price had plummeted. We had actually fired some people, and people got wind of it, and there was like a negative sentiment in the community. We had been quiet, and I was like, what would happen if we just like said like we kind of need some help on this, and who would come to the surface and who would leave? And when you have that, and this is one of the values of Constellation, internal and within our communities, that you have to have humility. You have to have humility, or else your ego will get in the way of your own success and be the barrier to your own success, or create your own demise. And so we hold that really true to ourselves.
Yeah, well said. Ben, thank you so much for all your contributions to the Crypto 2020 Summit. We're really looking forward to see what Constellation does in 2020. Thanks so much, and
Thank you.
we'll be back
Guys,
with
I'm
our
excited
next
about it.
guest.
You guys are amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.